another edition of the Traction Reaction Podcast. I'm Steve Zautke. Joining us today is Tony DiZinno. Welcome.
Steve, good to see you, man. It's another year, another week, another month. We're almost to May, not quite fully, but it feels like it. So
it certainly did last couple of days though, with 2022 Indy 500, the open test at Speedway. First time for a lot of these guys this year to get on the big track and get some real speed. And I mean, I think the coolest part for me, but I thought the coverage by Peacock was awesome. It's pretty cool to basically work from home and have 6 hours of racing on in the background, or at least a test. Is it riveting? Is it bump day circa 1990? No, but it's better than nothing. It's the, let's say, the hors d'oeuvre or the soup before the big meal, isn't it?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the coverage is laid back, the setting is laid back, the drivers are laid back, and that means you're going to get a lot more candid insight than you would ordinarily get once you get to May. Because I think everyone's in that we want to see where our baseline car is. A lot of times, these are the primary cars people have, but is Trackside Online and others have reported not every team was running its primary car this week. So you get to see those kind of insights. You get to hear drivers go off on things that may not entirely be relevant to May. I mean, Graham Rahal is, I keep saying this, he is such a great quote because he's just so unfiltered. And, Marty Snyder has a really good ability to kind of answer, ask some good questions, get some stuff out of people. Connor Daly's a riot like usual. It's a great mix. And then when it does get intense, like the end of the day was on Wednesday and Thursday, that's when it gets interesting. So, but it's a good warm up for sure. Entirely representative, not quite given the temperature change. It's always much colder, but it's still a good, like you say, good table set or good appetizer, nice little bowl of soup before the main course.
Yeah, some of the interviews were really eye-opening. Of course, we were going to talk about Elio and some of the incidents that happened on yesterday or on Wednesday's test session. But today I thought was really interesting. At the end of the day, they were talking to Montoya, and he kind of confessed that, last year he wasn't comfortable in that car at all. It wasn't until I think Carb Day he was able to do the first full kind of tank run with it, where he was starting to get the comfort level. But he said this year, totally different. And he was kind of surprised to be in the car. He says, Zach Brown asked him to join, and he kind of admitted he was a little, I don't know if I want to do this because of all the issues that he had last year. And I thought it was kind of eye-opening. Kind of see that with how he was running last year. It wasn't all things doing, it wasn't the greatest. We've seen Montoya at the Speedway. This year, though, even though the speed wasn't there, he said he wasn't really trying for getting to his, as he said, the big lap. He was more concerned of getting a comfort level and building off of that. And I thought it was pretty neat that he was able to admit that, last year wasn't having much fun at the Brickyard.
Yeah, and he was in a weird spot last year because he hadn't been in an IndyCar in, I think, 4 years at that point. So it was weird when he did the road course race as a third car. He was bottom of the timesheets all weekend. I mean, that Arrow McLaren SP team really struggled. It wasn't just him, Pato and Rosenquist were off as well. But once he got, like you said, once he got comfortable and dialed in, he did manage to get himself in contention later. I think he finished 8th or 9th, so he got a solid result out of it without even really trying and really feeling in the groove. Now you've got a year more experience under this car with this configuration of aero kit with the aero screen, which again he was new to last year. And I think the other big thing that everyone's really high on is the Chevy power band. I think a lot of folks are excited about where that power unit is compared to where it was last year. Montoya doesn't need to qualify well to race well. But I think he may qualify better. I mean, if he qualifies, mid-20s, whatever it was last year, and you say he's in the 15th, 18th spot, I think he won from 15th when he won his second one a few years back. So he's a smart racer. He, has this circled on the calendar, and like last year, he's got a warm-up race with the GP again.
Yeah, that certainly pays off with Chevy with the trap speed at the start-finish line. The top 6 were all top 7 actually were all Chevrolet, with Pato O'Ward clocking in at a 240.3, Connor Daly at a 240.1, and then VK Ilott, Will Power, McLaughlin, and Sage Karam before Romain Grosjean comes in at 8th in the Honda. And let's go back to day one on Wednesday. Grosjean, here's a F1 driver, didn't drive the ovals last year. You can kind of understand, especially how the 2019 season, or the 2020, I should say, season ended for him in Formula One. I can see maybe let's just dip the toe in. He certainly seems to be adjusting to Indianapolis pretty quickly.
One of the things I love about this test is kind of the quirkiness of who gets input in what session. So there's the rookie orientation and refresher course, and Grosjean and Jimmy Johnson are rookies, but they're considered veterans because they did their ROP separate at a test last fall. So this is not their first time to the track, and I think it showed from a comfort level standpoint for both drivers. Meanwhile, you have Montoya, who's won the thing twice, and Marco is on the pole 2 years ago. We're in the refresher session with the rookies, the guys that are getting their first lap. So interesting sidebar. Yeah, Grosjean, I think the fact he's with Andretti for this first Indy 500 that he's doing is really good. He's got now 5 other data points to go from, and the Meyer Shank group too, which we forget is part of their technical alliance. So he's got Elio to learn from, he's got Colton to learn from, he's got Rossi to learn from. He's going to be a factor. It's just a question of, is he going to keep the car in one piece? Because I feel like we haven't had the Roman big IndyCar smash yet. And I do wonder what's going to happen if and when that moment of pushing the line, going just a little bit too low in the corners, if that'll bite him. I hope it doesn't, but it's a rite of passage.
It certainly is. And of course, Team Penske, once again, I don't want to say they've had some off years, but it wasn't the domination we've seen. And now we're seeing the Chevrolets and some of the no toll laps. It was all Penske. Penske's fast right away. Is that concern for the rest of the teams?
I don't know if concern is the right word. I just think there's a whole collective good vibe on the Penske side this year. I mean, I was at Long Beach a few weeks ago, and just the pep in their step really for all 3 drivers. You got McLaughlin's a lot more comfortable now. He was pretty good last year by considering they did not have the pace outright, and he was mid-pack, but he was quickest of the Penske guys pretty comfortably, and he was in good contention until he had a speeding penalty late in the race. So he's got that experience under his belt. Powers, we'll get to him, I'm sure, in a minute with what happened to him in Wednesday. But he's savvy now. He's not as crazy. He's in the consistent mode, which is not something we're used to seeing from Will. And then Joseph to me is the wild card, because this is the best he's entered a season coming in. I mean, he's won at Barber and other tracks before in the past, but like winning at Texas, getting that last lap pass, winning at Long Beach. He's a dad now. He's got this year for him reminds me of Scott Dixon's 2008 when he got married to Emma. They, had a dynamite year, won 6-7 races, won the championship, won the Indy 500. Sometimes you just have a feeling that it might feel right. And it's certainly the best it's felt for him after a few years. Frankly, at Penske, his Indy 500 career has been a bit lackluster. I don't think he's been in contention beyond, some 4th, 5ths, which are not what they're looking for there. So warning sign, no, but I do think that they're all collectively in a better spot going forward.
Yeah, going back to yesterday, right away, we had Alexander Rossi spinning on the warm-up lane. Then we had a situation with Elio coming out of the pits, crashing in turn 2. And then the scariest moment is Will Power. When I saw that, everybody thought the same thing. This is just like Zanardi. I mean, it's the worst, probably the most, as a driver, the most uncomfortable position to be in, coming off into the racing lane at Indianapolis, the fastest corner on the circuit. And you got these cars bearing down on you. Colton Herta did a phenomenal job. The in-car is
wow.
Is like a video game. Will Power, I think it was this morning.
I think it was his Peacock interview right afterwards.
He was showing the emotion of, he was scared. I mean, I don't blame him. I mean, that's a situation. He says, that's the kind of situation that keeps drivers up at night. So I can certainly believe that.
It was definitely the closest of calls, and really there were multiple close calls out of the gate. I mean, Elio's could have been worse too if anyone was near him in that turn 2 complex, because I mean, at least you're scrubbing off a little bit of speed there, but turn 1, you mentioned the trap speeds earlier, you're going in at 238 to 240 if you're trimmed out properly, and especially if you're getting a tow. I mean, just the sheer reaction time that Colton's got to have to be able to know where to place it, hope that Will doesn't come back up. I mean, there's so many things that have to go right to avoid a major calamity when it does happen. And, that speaks to a driver mature beyond his mature beyond his years behind the wheel, where he's able to make that correction so fast. And Will has obviously been around so long that he knows what dangerous moments are like, because they don't usually happen. I thought about this yesterday. I was like, could you put an inside retaining wall in the warm-up lane, for pit out or something? But then I thought, that doesn't really make a ton of sense, because then you'd spin back to the inside, you'd have inside retaining wall damage. And we've seen plenty of times off of one guys hit the inside retaining wall anyway, and it's brutal. So I don't think that's feasible, but yeah, always good to be talking about bullets dodged rather than injuries or serious other issues.
Expected the penetrating, what's the word of the day? The penetration fluid or penetration?
Yeah, the sealant fluid came up, sealer fluid. It's just like, I think the thing that threw the field was there was no consistency. There was no rhyme or reason why certain cars snapped and other ones didn't. I mean, because Rossi had it right out of the gate to start the session, and then Elio's was in 2. And then last year, I mean, it wasn't sealant related, but when Graham Rahal had the tire had come loose last year in 2, and that, we saw what that did. The tire hits the catch fence, hits the wall, hits Connor Daly's car right up front, because of course it would. That's, Connor Daly type luck. They've gotten away with several big ones here in a very short amount of time. But yes, sealer and sealant is not a word you want to hear too much.
Well, I'm sure it'll be taken care of before the month of May. I think it's a situation you'd rather have that and know it, and then not know it until the month of May. So
agreed. I was going back and forth with a couple of friends yesterday or on Wednesday, and the comparisons to the 2015 kind of period when you had the manufacturer kits and there was the lift issues, that there was the number of airborne type crashes, and then they had to change the boost setting on qualifying to race boost. Yeah, yes, Wednesday was bad, but it wasn't even remotely close to the level that 2015 was. And, there's not like the domed skids or things that came in to fix that problem. So, but still it's a moment of it's fascinating that, the cars haven't changed, the track hasn't really changed, but yet in such short amount of time, there's this big a difference, with just a little tiny bit of change that makes a massive, series. So it is good to have the test, as you say, to kind of get things out of the way early on.
The word was penetrant. That was it. So, but Elio, that was his winning car from last year, but it wasn't a hard crash. The car is repairable. Doesn't look like the tub was damaged. They did not run today. I don't blame them not to. But then you have somebody like Dale Coyne, who actually were running road course cars with aero components on it.
Really interesting that's the case. I think the importance of primary cars for the 500 significantly in the last, call it 4 or 5 years, where you talk about all year guys are rubbing on the cars, they don't want to bring it up. I think there was a really interesting flashpoint when Harvey crashed at Texas earlier this year. He didn't get to run, so they had to bring out the backup car, which was their primary car for the 500, and Ferrucci was responsible for keeping the 500 car in one piece. So interesting that not all teams opted to use their primary car, but at the same point, I kind of get it given that whole temperature disparity. If the primary car is more suited to warmer, call it 70s to 80s, hopefully not 90s temperatures, you want to have a car that's, very able to penetrate the air better and don't want to waste it on that. So interesting strategies. It is cool that in an era where there's not really much car technical type discussion, that's still something that you make a note of. One other funny sidebar on that Elio tub, that tub was the former Dragon Speed tub, which got sold to Meyer Shank. So the thing that was barely a field filler 2 years ago wound up being the winning chassis a year later for Meyer Shank. It's those little like stupid bizarre nuggets like that I love. So
that's good stuff. Thank you, Tony. I want to just read off some drivers, which I kind of footnoted and kind of want to use. I want to see if we come up with kind of like the same thing, same notes on them. Santino Ferrucci.
He had a good chat Wednesday. I like where that team is at, Dreyer and Reinbold. I really like how much focus they put into Indy only as an Indy only team. They haven't been 2 cars for 2 or 3 years now. I forget what the last time they had it. It's usually been JR and Sage Karam, and with Santino and Sage Karam, you've got 2 guys that are really fast, good racers. Santino's not a very good qualifier. He hasn't been. He's raced well. So if he qualifies better, which again, if the Chevy thing does, I think that could be interesting. He was really fast on Wednesday. I think he was like 3rd or 4th or something.
He never ran a lap of practice in NASCAR. Every lap he drove in competition last year in NASCAR was in conditions.
Wow.
That kind of blew my mind. But then when you think about it, you go, oh yeah, I can believe that. He said he was in a late model at a small track in North Carolina, and that was a stock car experience. And next thing you know, they stuck him in a Xfinity car, and he was running, I think, at Atlanta. Was his first race last year.
I don't think he'll win too many popularity contests, but he is a wheelman. That kid can drive. He can drive, and he has become such a good oval racer. I mean, to do that in NASCAR, where so many other drivers of much statistical significance have struggled, to then go in with no practice and do as well as he did, I think was outstanding.
Devlin DeFrancesco.
I want him to be anonymous in May, and the reason I say that is he's had too many incidents. Yeah. He's not. I'm on record as saying I think he needed another year in lights, kind of from a preparation standpoint. A good, quiet, under the radar month where you start, I don't know, 21st, 22nd, finish top 15, just make all the laps. Yeah. That's all you need to do. Don't make any wow factors. Just bring it home solid. And I don't know, Andretti's 4th and 5th tends to sometimes kind of throw a gamble strategically. So I think he has pace. I think he has talent. I just think he needs to be calm and quiet and just focus on getting as many laps as possible.
Yeah, he did touch the wall coming out at 2 today, but they were able to repair it, and he got some more laps in today. J.R. Hildebrand.
That's an interesting one. Boy, he I think outperformed where the Foyt team was last year. I think he was a 3rd or 4th car there. Now he's had a warm-up race at Texas, which he hasn't had for several years prior to the 500. Foyt's cars look really good in no-toe speed. He was up, I think, the top 5 in that framework. Very experienced, doesn't make a lot of mistakes, obviously, aside from the one major one he made as a rookie, but
that was a situation. That was one of those you run a computer program or whatever, you run that scenario 30 times and that car is not there
at least 98 or 99. I don't know. I mean, he's one where like I could see him finishing, top 10. I could see him not even cracking the top 20. I don't know.
I think he's more important to that team,
yes,
as an engineer than almost a driver. The feedback that he's providing is on such a high level, and you have somebody, and I think it's going to really benefit Kirkwood because he's got so much talent, but he doesn't have that book of experience where Hildebrand has that, and also this engineering brain and experience and whatnot. And I just think, I think with Larry Foyt taking more of a prominent role, he knows what's going on. Yeah. It's the engineering side. That's where you get your speed. And I think that's why you're starting to see these incremental better and better and better. And I'm excited to see, by when late summer, what Kyle Kirkwood can do in that car.
Yeah, I mean, he drove from my vantage point at Long Beach. Kirkwood drove a perfect race at Long Beach. The problem is a perfect race for Foyt is start 12th, finish 10th, and do it on merit, where you're not relying on a ton of attrition to get to that spot. I mean, you could argue that's almost, as good, if not better, than some of the results Bourdais put in the last year or two, where he outdragged that car to wherever, because this was something that he did on his own. The one thing I wonder about with Kirkwood is, He's got good endurance experience from his sports car career with Lexus. He
Mhm.
hasn't had a 500-mile oval race yet. And without a training race at the Speedway, not having the Freedom 100 for lights grads, I think sucks at this
Yeah.
point. I think you're going to start to see more of the impact of that affect the subsequent rookie classes down the road. That's a training ground. I mean, somebody like Dalton Kellett, their third driver, isn't necessarily renowned as the fastest guy out there, but he was always really good at the Freedom 100, very consistent. And he, let's face it, he out-qualified Will Power on pace last year.
Yeah.
Don't ask me how that happened, but he did. So
What's your take so far on your so far?
I like it. I think it's interesting that we're in a Penske has won all three, and it's not really been close. I mean, I think Ganassi had such a run in 2020 and 2021 that Penske needed to make changes. I didn't expect the changes they made would be paying off this quickly, where McLaughlin should have won the first two. Josephson is new as a new engineer, and he's won 2 races with his new engineer. I mean, for goodness sake, if he wins Barber or the Indy GP, he gets $1 million because he's from this People Ready Force for Good or whatever their charity type challenges, which is great. And then Power, like I said earlier, he's not been the liability or as inconsistent as he usually is. So they're on rails. It's the other teams that, Honda has looked a slight step back, and usually I remember when they pulled the rabbit out of their hat in 12 on Carb Day, and everyone was like, "Whoa, where'd this pace come from?" I wonder if they have something similar in place, because it definitely feels like a Chevrolet year with really where Penske's at, and then where some of the other teams. I'd like to see Arrow McLaren get a little better. Carpenter's team looks really good this week. They had a strong week with VK, Connor, Ed. I didn't really see figure as much, but I don't think anyone would begrudge Ed or that team having a bit of success either. So
Right.
the season, yeah, I mean, 3 really different races. I think Long Beach was a really good street race. Texas was a lot better than anticipated. It's just a shame that there didn't have a ton of fans show up for it.
Yeah, I think Texas, it's not just an IndyCar problem, it's also a NASCAR problem. And I'd like to kind of talk to a bunch of fans down there and just say what's going on, because I think you're getting a sense of there's some
When you see it coming.
animosity or something. I don't know. There's something going on. I mean, the crowds are so huge, and now they've dropped off. And plus you got the F1 explosion now. I mean, how about with you? You're more of an urban area than I am. But even with I got some friends and their sons, they're in the F1. They're not racing people. They're this F1 thing is just wild, isn't it?
It's insane. If you would have told me, when I was still back at NBC and we had the F1 contract, I mean, we were the US home for F1, that 5 years later, F1 would be super mainstream. It would be super casual people that are talking about it, and the influx of new fans that have come in via Drive to Survive and other areas. The fact there's Miami happening in a couple of weeks, there's Las Vegas happening in 23. It's like to me, it's the new soccer. And I realize I look like a soccer person right now with this sweatshirt I've got on, but it's like people are gathering for it and there's hype. I think the easiest way to describe it, it's simple, it's drama, it's controversy, you've got fans of people on both sides. IndyCar has, I think, a better product, and I think they have more potential winners in any given weekend, but you don't have that like dynamic, what's the rivalry? You don't have a Lewis versus Max. Joseph Newgarden is awesome, and I don't know who his biggest rival is. Is it Dixon? Is it Power? Is it Colton Herta? Is it Rossi? I don't know. I mean, it's like it changes so regularly, where now I think F1 is it's on a trajectory. It's just a question of how long they can sustain the upward momentum before, inevitably it peaks and plateaus.
Because I think most people knew about Lewis Hamilton, and now they're kind of seeing, okay, this is what he does. And so he had that, they knew of him, but now there's actually, okay, he's driving. Okay, then they're kind of putting everything together, if that makes
Well, and
sense.
it's not a coincidence that Roman Grosjean, who was, mid-pack for most of his F1 career, he had some good years. Granted, I think he Lotus Renault, he did have 2 or 3 really solid years, but he comes into IndyCar off the back of, some pretty mediocre F1 seasons, and he has a great story coming out of the whole Fire rebranding thing. He was the most popular driver in a survey in his first year driving for Dale Coyne. I mean, it's like it's like a racing Mad Lib that you put that sentence together, and it really guy goes from Haas F1 back of the grid to overperforming a combination veteran IndyCar team with a NASCAR partner to then go to Andretti Autosport to replace a guy who is literally an American that won the Indy 500, won the championship, and now doesn't have a ride this year. Who would have thunk that is real? But that's real life right now. So,
all right. Well, Tony, we certainly appreciate you taking time out, and we'll definitely get together down in Indy before the 500. We'll get do another one of these podcasts and get some predictions as we get closer to the month of May and the 500. Looking forward to it. It's anybody who's an open wheel fan, it's our Christmas, isn't it?
it's great. I love May so much. I think I had a conversation with a PR friend of mine at the start of the year. It's like we always joke there's 3 IndyCar seasons in one. There's the run up to May, and then the rest of the season. So we're pretty much almost at the end of that first season. I'll consider Barber part of that first season, even though it's technically May 1st. And I do have a bit of breaking news. I'm not the 33rd car. So
that's right. Well, yeah, the latest rumor going around was Ryan Briscoe, one of the drivers, and
there should be like a driver team generator at this point.
Sure.
I mean, it's funny. I'm obviously not as close to this as, in past years, but it's still pretty close. And you still get enough nuggets where, Long Beach, there were 2 or 3 potential discussions happening. And there have probably been 2 or 3 more potential discussions since then. I mean, I was postulating earlier today. I was like, has there ever been this much discussion around a car that isn't likely going to contend, barring any sort was something that's coming together this late in terms of engineer, crew, team, combination just to fill the field? It's strange because you have a lot of capable drivers, a lot of capable teams, and a lot of capable cars, but none of them all seem to have each other. They have piece A is piece B and piece B is piece C, but they don't have all 3 pieces. So it's very strange. And it's not like the IRL years where you knew they'd get 33 because the Holman George family would put enough together to make it happen. And you'd pull guys that hadn't raced in 10 years out of mothballs. But now it's a really weird dynamic because you have a greater full season count, which impacts your extra cars. So it's a funny dichotomy.
I think there will be. I think they will fill that spot.
They'll fill it.
Yeah, I think the negativity, people would dwell on that too much. It would take away from the race. For you and I, it's silly. It's like the meme.
IndyCar fans
about today, right?
That's the famous meme. Yes.
Yeah. So just throw in a car like they were mentioning today. It could be an AJ Foyt car, but it's not going to be AJ Foyt crew. So he may lease the car to somebody. There's people out there. There's more than enough people.
George Snyder again, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Something will get put together. Ryan Briscoe could, because why not?
Yeah, I mean, pull a Briscoe, a Hunter Ray. I don't think either of them is going to necessarily do that. I think Steph Wilson's probably the most likely person, but
nothing against Steph. I like to see somebody else. That's a good poll. Throw that on Twitter. Maybe I'll do that. Who should drive? And but there's a lot of drivers out there. And who knows? Maybe it'll be like Danny and Gaius in '96. Where did he come from? So I don't know who may be that person. I don't know.
Right. I do. It was interesting. I was looking through the the difference in years. Sometimes you think about like, who's not in the field this year that was last year. I mean, there is a pretty big gap. I mean, of guys that you're losing. I mean, you're losing Hinchcliffe, Hunter Ray, Bourdais, Charlie Kimball, among others, a couple one-off guys, but there's been a pretty big change to the grid the last, 2-3 years. And it is unusual that you have so many big-ish names that are not really in contention. So, or you have other guys where, I look at this year's, is this going to be the last Elio, Montoya, Kanaan year? I think there's a very high likelihood that this is the last run for TK and Montoya. I hope I'm wrong on that, but I don't know where they go contractually for 23. So who knows? I mean, it's fascinating. It's always a good topic of discussion as to who's in and who's not.
Yeah, if we go back 5 years, 2017, Chilton. That's right. Chilton finished 4th in that race. A lot of
That
people.
was that was the most bizarre. Like Chilton and Ed Jones almost won. Alonso blew up.
Yeah. Gabby Chavez. He's still an active in road racing. Pippa, Spencer
Yep.
Pigot, our friend of the show, Spencer Pigot. Oriol Servia, I don't think he would do it though. Charlie Kimball, Zach Veach, who's still running road racing. But Buddy Lazier, who was already mentioned, but I think that's tongue in cheek because I think Buddy's in his 50s now. So, and Jay Howard, but Jay Howard's comfortable doing, friend of the show also, he's comfortable doing what he's doing with his racing school
development team, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see who that. I think it will be that they'll have one more driver.
Yeah, I agreed. I don't think they would not have it. It is funny that there have been a few occasions where they have actually started 32 because somebody went out on the first lap or went out before the green flag. So
97.
Yeah, that happened.
97. 3 guys. Giafoni, Kenny Brack, who won the race a couple years later, and there was one other driver got wiped out in the first lap. So Alfonso Giafoni, bring him back.
Who knew we'd have an Alfonso Giafoni match?
All right, Tony, thanks a lot. We'll see you in a couple weeks down in Indianapolis. I appreciate you taking time out.
Absolutely. Sounds good, man. Thanks.
All right. You've been listening to the Traction Reaction Podcast. I'm Steve Zautke. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.